So again, separating the initial pain or joy you feel to the overall goodness or evilness of the event implies that you cannot solely rely on how you feel. That's important, which means that you become dependent on what the text, the Quran or the Hadith teaches you that is good or bad. So it might feel constriving, restrictive to say that you have to rely solely on the scriptures. But I would say, on the contrary, it's quite liberating because it liberates yourself from these oftentimes negative social constructions. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Chapter 3, Section 4, these notions that are redefined by religion. The notion that I'll talk about today is the notion of good and evil. So because these notions, like good and bad, are highly tainted by normative media, mainstream materialist worldviews, it is important to clarify the religious definitions. So following from the previous discussion on conditional free will, the fact that Allah, that God manages the course of history, leads me to wonder why Allah, who calls himself the infinitely merciful, like Rahman, Rahim, and the one who's just, who's ultimately the most just, allows suffering on earth. Suffering could be a big question if you rest on this, again, materialist worldview. But Allah says that He has a plan, He has a greater plan, that what you see, what you feel is limited, obviously, by your perception. But there's something else that you don't perceive yet. And if you take that other ilm al-ghaib into account, then that suffering would make sense. And that the pleasure you feel and the suffering you endure will make sense. So I must realize that from a religious point of view, the notion of good and evil are separated from the joy and the suffering that one feels. So in general, pain is linked to bad and joy is linked to good. But Allah tells you clearly that He will test you. He will test you with wealth, in the sense that He can restrain wealth, and that will be painful, or He can give you more wealth, and that will be pleasurable. But both are tests, and you can fail both, or you can succeed in both. It depends on your behavior. It depends on how well you can dissociate that idea of good and joy, and then evil and pain. If you want examples of that in the Quran, take Surah Al-Kahf, the story of Khidr and Musa alayhi salam. When they travel together and Musa sees Khidr destroying the boat, killing the young person, and rebuilding a wall without asking for any compensation, although they were in great need of compensations. Musa just does not understand because he only sees the materiality of it. And Khidr comes and says, look, you don't see the greater consequences of this action. The boat, I damaged it. It was a way how to preserve it from the king. The boy, I killed it because it was leading astray his parents. The wall was hiding a treasure underneath. And the kids to whom that treasure belongs were too young to keep it for themselves at the time. So to rebuild the wall was a way how to delay the discovery of the treasure. So they were all at the end beneficial, like all three material laws were at the end beneficial in the long term. So that's what the story is teaching you. It's like if you go through life, like if you go through challenges in your life, some that are painful, you have to trust that it is for the greater good. Now, if you want a more materialistic example, if you could take an athlete of high level, these athletes will go through rigorous training, physical training that are stressful and like physically challenging and even mentally challenging, but they still go through because they see the greater good. By going through this training, they have a hope to achieve a medal, first place, in whatever competition. So again, separating the initial pain or joy you feel to the overall goodness or evilness of the event implies that you cannot solely rely on how you feel. That's important. Like if something happens and you feel you derive pleasure or you suffer from it, does not necessarily mean that it's good or bad for you, which means that you become dependent on what the text, the Quran or the Hadith teaches you that is good or bad. Like the Quran teaches you that you have been created to worship, which means that whatever facilitate that worship will be good for you, because ultimately that's your objective. So it might feel constriving, restrictive to say that you have to rely solely on the scriptures. But I would say, on the contrary, it's quite liberating, because it liberates yourself from these oftentimes negative social constructions that teaches you that it's better to be rich, it's better to be skinny, it's better to live long, to occupy a socially high status, to have power over others. Which, sure, these are pleasurable, but if they are not for the right objective, ultimately you'll suffer from them. So Islam might be constraining by redefining what is good and what is evil, but again, through this redefinition, I see that it liberates me from all these other potentially negative influences. وجزاك الله خيرا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.